I want to welcome in Melissa Bryant. She's Chief Policy Officer with Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America. Melissa, good to see you.
Thank you so much.
I do want to point out that there is no connection with PTSD and the man who opened fire inside of that bar, but he did serve with the Marine Corps. And do people just jump to that thinking, oh, it must be PTSD? And do people still have a hard time understanding really what that is?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, the president this morning made comments saying that I heard that he had PTSD, and unfortunately there's this broken veteran narrative that people immediately jump to. And while many veterans like myself suffered from PTSD, many of us also receive mental health care. And that's really the important thing, is that we're not a workplace threat for others. We're not all broken. Yes, we've seen some horrible things. And when I saw the Thousand Oaks shooter, when I saw the incident taking place and the breaking news, the first thing I thought was, this sounds like a significant action or a SIG act that I would have seen in Iraq of, that many who were killed in action. So first and foremost, that's just a horrific thought and flashback to a deployment. But secondly, that PTSD is not necessarily paint someone as having an increased propensity to commit murder.
For violence,
many of us, absolutely. For IAVA members, for those of us who have, 57% of us have spoken about them having a service-connected mental health injury, but 73% of our members who talk about having a mental health injury have sought care. And it's important also to note that when a loved one speaks to you about seeking care, 80% of our IAVA members have then sought care after a loved one has pointed out to them that they may need help. And so it's important to do those buddy checks, and it's important to ensure that we're reaching out to those who may be in crisis.
Yeah, we were just listening to, before I introduced you, to a man who served and said, I was in denial, rolling my eyes, saying, oh, I don't have PTSD. And then he realized that he did because of some of the symptoms. But the suicide rate with those who have served, I mean, it is catastrophic, the number of people that you see taking their own lives. Is that usually connected to the trauma that they have seen and not even knowing maybe they have PTSD?
Absolutely. Unfortunately, we are still suffering from an epidemic with suicide within the veteran community. We lose nearly 20 of our brothers and sisters a day to suicide. It's something that Iraq and Afghanistan Veterans of America has called special attention to. Just in October, we had an activation in Washington, D.C. on the Mall. We planted 5,520 flags to represent those 20 a day who had died by suicide just in 2018 alone. This is something that is a top priority for the VA. This is something that needs to be a top priority for the Department of Defense. We need to ensure that we're reaching out to all of those who may be in crisis and ensuring that we're bringing them into the fold and getting them the care that they need. But I must stress the point that we are not all broken, and a diagnosis of PTSD, again, it does not increase the likelihood of someone to commit a violent crime against someone else.
And Melissa, just a couple seconds left here. 28-year-old Ian Long, the man who walked into that bar, we don't know his state of mind prior to serving or after, but is it difficult for someone to get help if they don't want it, if they don't see that they need it?
Unfortunately, there is a stigma. There are barriers to care, but we're getting much better at it. I would implore anyone to reach out for help. There's the Veterans Crisis Line that you can dial if you feel that you're actively having suicidal ideation. But in general, if you're just struggling, reach out. And if you know someone who may be struggling, again, 80% of our members have told us that when someone brought to their attention that you may be in crisis, then they went and sought the care that they need. That's the important thing. But please, please, do not paint us with this broad brush of being broken veterans. We are not. We are strong. We are a very hardworking community. We are usually pillars of our community who do great things even after we take off the uniform, because that call to service is ingrained. That's who veterans are. We are not broken.
Very true. Melissa Bryant, thank you, and thank you for your service. We do want to put this number on your screen, Melissa. You're helping so many. If you or someone you know out there needs help, you can call this number. That's 1-800-27